right. Well, I think we'll get underway, and as we know, people can arrive and come and go. I know there's lots of different things always on, but kia ora koto, ko Stephen toku ingoa no o tatahi ao. My name's Stephen Moe, and it's great to see you all joining and coming in. It's been a couple of weeks since we last met, so nice to see you all, and also welcome to some of you who haven't joined these calls before. So it's good to see you, and yeah, the purpose behind it, just because there are a few of you who are new, the purpose is when lockdown happened, I was talking with a few people and we thought we'd get 3 or 4 people together. And then on that first call, I think there was 50 or 60 people. So there was a real interest in connecting. And we've just continued since then for the last, well, since the beginning, really, meeting weekly. And now we're meeting every 2 weeks. And the purpose of the calls is to give a chance for cross-sector conversations and potential collaborations to emerge, because we aren't representing any one particular subset of the not-for-profit community sector, charities, funders. We really represent a really broad cross-section. So now there's about 200 people on the email list, and many people can't join the calls, but they enjoy watching afterwards or hearing about what's going on. So that's really the purpose. And today what we're going to do is have some sector updates. There's about 3 or 4 of you who have things that you'd like to update us on. And then what we'll do, normally we break into little rooms, breakout rooms, as a chance to actually talk with others. So the bigger setting, it's harder for everybody to have a chance to speak. So that's what we'll do again today. But we're really fortunate because we have Mele on the call, and she's going to give us an update on a governance initiative, which has been going on for quite a couple months at least now. So what I'll do is, I think I need to make you the co-host.
Kia ora koutou, talofa lava, and thank you so much, Stephen, and this group for allowing me to give this presentation on this really awesome project that many on the call have been involved with. So I'm Mele Wendt, and I'm the chair of the steering group for this project. And I just also want to acknowledge Monica Briggs from CSI, who CSI is a key partner in the project. And Monica and I work very closely together, as I do with Francesca Ephraim, who's been involved through DIA Charity Services in this project since it started. Can you hear me okay, Stephen? I can see you. Yep, all good, sweet. And there are other people on the call like Ros who have been involved as well. So anyway, I just thought I'd just spend the next 8 minutes going over some key slides that really just talk about the nuts and bolts of what this project is all about, where we've been and where we're going to. So in November 2018, a group of people interested in improving community governance. Sorry, I'm just trying to get rid of these you people so that I can see, so that I can see my slides. Interested in improving community governance and led by Dr. Joe Cribb, former CEO of Ministry for Women, to discuss how we could improve governance in the not-for-profit NGO community sector. And we continued meeting as a group, and we sort of called ourselves the Coalition of the Willing for Community Governance, and we had a couple of workshops to really look at what the problems and opportunities were in community governance, and concluded that there needed to be a coordinated, collaborative national strategy for this. That notion, why can't I? Oh, there we go. That notion was reinforced by the report that Joe Cribb and CSI released in August 2019, which called for a national coordinated approach to invest in community governance. Towards the end of last year, the coalition became a steering group with proper terms of reference, and we developed and signed an MOU with CSI to implement the project formally, and CSI provides the backbone infrastructure to the project. So who's involved? I will say that we haven't set out to try to be representative of the community sector, because that's absolutely impossible given there are 500,000 people involved in community sector organizations and governance, and thousands of groups. So really it's just been a group of people And the current members are, in terms of representations, representative organizations, if you, no, that's not right. They're not representative organizations because we're not trying to be representative. But the organizations currently participating in the steering group are listed there. And other organizations have been involved along the way, including Ros from Community Networks Aotearoa. And as I mentioned before, charity services been there throughout. Initial funding for the project was obtained from Auckland Council, Foundation North, Rata Foundation, Grant Thornton, and the DIA Ministerial Discretionary Fund. We had an event in December of last year to announce this project and announce the work, and we invited people who were interested to let us know so that we could include them in the design process for the strategy. And over the course of the summer, we received over 80 people, notifications from over 80 people to be involved. Another 50 followed. And everybody who said they were interested to be involved was invited to be involved in the design process for the strategy. Our goal that we set up right from the beginning in developing this national strategy is to strengthen, unify, enhance the value of, and support best practice in community sector governance. And our vision is that all community organisations in Aotearoa are well governed. Also want to highlight that this whole national strategy and all of our work is focusing on tier 3 and 4 organisations. So where the governance needs are greatest and where there are fewer resources to help strengthen governance. And for those who might not know, so the threshold for tier 3 organisations is annual operational budgets of 2 million and under. We identified 6 outcome areas to focus on. The first, all community governance members, group members will have basic governance skills. Secondly, that they apply those skills on the boards in the community sector that they serve on, so that all these community boards perform their governance function well. Thirdly, that everyone values community governance in the same way that people value corporate governance. Fourthly, that we have a diverse, talented pipeline of people coming through to be appointed onto community boards to really strengthen that succession. And fifthly, to identify and share best practice in community governance. And lastly, that all boards are well chaired. We've also based our work on these key principles, and I think it's really important to reinforce that to all of you, that we seek to support and amplify the work that is already existing, not to duplicate. And that all of our actions delivered need to meet community organisations where they are in terms of their needs, that these actions need to be practical and tangible, and that we will continue to focus on the community sector and their needs. So from March to June, over 140 people were involved in co-design sprints. So we've had 6 so far. The first one was held in person, but because of the COVID lockdown, we moved the remaining sprints online. And actually the online sprint process worked really, really well. A big part of that was the fantastic facilitation by Joe Cribb and supported by Jade Tang Taylor of Foundation North. So the 6 sprints focused on each of the 6 outcome areas that these 6 outcome areas that I mentioned there. And we decided more recently to have a 7th sprint focusing specifically on Māori governance. And this sprint will occur on the 29th and the 30th of June. And the topic, the challenge statement for this sprint is: what actions are needed to ensure that all kaitiaki exhibit and role model the right behaviours needed for success in their governance roles, obviously in the Māori governance context. So we're looking for more participants for the sprint, and so if you know of anybody who'd be interested, then please let me know, and we will send them the information and get them involved. So that's coming up the week after next. each sprint focused on creating key actions. So what are the 1 or 2 key things that can be implemented nationally to really, really improve in this particular area? And one example of that was mentoring, the idea that we implement for New Zealand a mentoring program for new governors. And Robin Kittle, is Robin Kittle on the line yet? She wasn't when we started, but she'll be, the intention was that she's going to be speaking to elaborate on this potential mentoring program for new governors shortly, yeah. All of those key actions, of which 13 so far have come out of those 6 sprints, are being incorporated into the National Action Plan for Community Governance. Notice it's gone from being a national strategy to a National Action Plan, because this is all about actions, and the document comprises of these key actions. Each of those actions has a small working group that are developing the idea further and consulting with people throughout New Zealand and organisations, and also developing funding proposals. So we have embarked on sort of phase 2 of our fundraising efforts to get significant funding to implement all of these key actions for New Zealand over the next 3 years. The National Action Plan document will be officially launched on the 19th of August in the morning from 9:30 to 11:30 online, and that'll involve all the people who are involved in the sprints as well as anybody who's interested. So we invite you to participate and hear more about it there. But I just want to end by saying we really do want and appreciate your support to date, but we want your continued support and input into the development and the implementation of these key actions and the National Action Plan. This is all about collaboration with the sector. And yeah, it's quite an exciting project. We believe that the implementation of these key actions should bring significant improvement into the governance of our community organisations. Questions or comments? How did I do for my time, Stephen?
That was pretty good. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Got a lot of slides. The other thing is, you've said that you can make the slides available afterwards.
Yes,
so
definitely.
Yeah, that would be awesome. If you're able to email them to me, I'll just attach them, because as we said, I think there's 25 of us right now, but there's a lot more people who would get the email and can keep up to date. So
yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? Maybe while you think of any, I was involved in, I didn't help with the developing like the full day version of the sprint, but I came in as one of the critiquers or people. Challengers, yeah, that's the right word. And I found the process was really seamless, and it was, using Zoom, came in, listened to the ideas, gave some comments, and yeah, so from my perspective, having personally been involved, it was very straightforward and easy. So I'd encourage other people to support it. And I think it's just a great example of us trying to because each of us in our own sees the problems, but it's only coming together that we can actually come up with solutions. That's my perspective anyway. So the more of us that could get behind initiatives like this, I think it's really positive. As you said, Mele, what we agreed was that perhaps Robin was going to be able to share, but I don't see her joining at the moment. So what I might do, she may join in a little bit, and if she doesn't join, then on the next call she can give her, her thoughts about how people could be involved. What I might do though is in switch tack. If anybody has any questions, we'll come back to you in a minute. But I'd love to give the chance for somebody else to give a sector update. And I know Rochelle is on the call from Hui-E. Now they had a call really recently, had wonderful call with representatives from political parties. So it was really interesting to hear their perspectives. And Rochelle, I think if it's okay, I'll hand over to you to give us an update on how that went and what you see as the next steps from that.
Sure. Thanks, Stephen. Kia ora, everybody. I'm Rochelle Stewart-Allen from Hui-E Community Aotearoa. So a group of four of us, so Hui-E, Com Voices, Sue Barker Charities Law and Trust Democracy, which is Dave Henderson, held a webinar last week with 6 political parties representatives talking about how their policies and their thoughts and contributions to the community sector. So you can either see that on, if you just go to our YouTube page for Hui-E, you can see it there, or you can go to our Facebook page, so it's also streamed there. So I haven't checked this morning, but I think last time we've had about 900 people look at it, which is great. So that was the advantage. It was meant to originally be an in-person meeting, but once we got it online during the global pandemic, then that really opened up for opportunities for people all around the country to attend. So it's an hour-and-a-half discussion. If you go to our website, Hui-E website, there's a link on the front page, but it'll take you, there's a summary of the discussion and some of the core quotes from the, we had 2 MPs and 4 other politicians. So we had Poto Williams, who's obviously the Minister of Community and Voluntary Sector. We had Jan Logie, Tracy Martin, Alfred Naro, Brooke Van Velden, who's from ACT, and Jeff Simmons from TOP. We unfortunately couldn't get any links in with the Māori Party. We tried really hard, but unfortunately we didn't manage to get a rep for them. So the summary is there on our Hui-E website. From here, I'm putting out the call, what we're hoping to continue on these conversations leading up to the election, particularly bringing visibility for the community and voluntary sector, and the importance of being front of mind, particularly at the moment as the parties are making their policies and drafting their policies. So the next step that we're looking at, and I'm putting out the call today, so if you're running a community organisation and you would like to write a blog in response to what was discussed on the webinar, if you can please get hold of me, so I'll give you my email. And we're going to try to do a series of blogs over the next kind of 2 to 3 months leading up to the election. We're also, the team of the group of 4 of us are also talking about what other kind of ongoing conversations there might be. We had some interesting feedback in the survey of participants. One of them was it would be great to repeat it, but this time the community sector talks and the politicians listen, which is kind of interesting. So really trying to keep this top of mind, the community sector. You'll see the #1 topic. There was a poll on our Facebook page on what were the main topics that the community sector wanted discussed. So the #1 topic was the re-establishment of the Office of the Community and Voluntary Sector. So there's a lot of conversation at the beginning of the call on that for about, it probably went on for about the first half an hour. So there's some work going on that in terms of what that might look like, and there's some of us in the background like starting to pull that together so that we could actually then go back up to government and say this is what the sector wants. So we're just in the very early stages of exploring what something might look like in terms of a process for that and how we might do that. So my email address is rochelle@huie.org.nz. So that's huie.org.nz. If you're interested in writing a blog from the community sector perspective, it could be a specific area of the community, whether it's health or environment or arts or whatever it is. But watching what the MPs have said and the political party representatives have said, and then making a, it can include challenges in there, but essentially making a market about what you think is important that the political parties are including in their policies, really trying to bring visibility around the community sector. So we'll probably put them up on our Hui-E website, but we're just exploring if we can get them in a much wider forum from that. So I will post my email in the chat as well. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Great, perfect. Thank you so much. And yeah, the chat function is actually really helpful. So if you do have thoughts or comments, you can post them in there. And I see people are doing that, which is already some suggestions and thoughts and ideas are floating back and forth. Yeah, and I tuned into that session that you ran with the politicians. And I think the impression that I came away from, of course, it was politicians, but they were all speaking very positively in terms of we want to do more to support this sector. we understand how important it is, and, maybe I'm at, the cup is half full, but it was encouraging to me to hear them going out and talking in that way. So that was really helpful. So thank you.
I definitely had we got them to a very, we had Rawdon Christie as the facilitator, and, he managed to get them to a very shared, collective agreement about what they wanted to do and wanted to say. Some of the critique that we've heard back on the feedback was, well, then who's going to take the action going forward? So that's the challenge that we will then start to have some more confirmed things that we want to then put up to the party, so that actually it's, they're saying, great, we're committed to this and we're committed to the sector. There was a lot of discussion about how the government officials had really learned a lot about the community sector and were very committed going forward to have better engagement, so that was positive. And the ministers and the political parties all were very supportive and definitely all on the same page. But now it's about how we actually turn that into action that's to the advantage of our sector.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Thank you very much. So I just, in between the sector updates, I wanted to give an update from my perspective too, because I've been a little bit busy. So this is something that came out since the last call, called Charting the Future, a framework for thinking about change. So Craig Fisher and I wrote that. Craig is often on these calls. And we were just reflecting, we literally wrote it within about 5 or 6 days. And it's a short 16 or so pages looking at the sector, thinking about collaboration, the future, what does this all mean, and asking 7 hard questions. So I know all of you are activated people who understand what it takes to pull things together. It did take a lot of time to write it, so it would be cool to hear from you. If you have time, you're able to look at it, and then hopefully, if it's helpful, helping us get it out for other people to consider. We've already heard it being used in strategy sessions and things. And in the email, I'll send a link. We had a call with 55 people on Zoom last Friday, and answered and shared our reflections on the 7 questions. So just to draw that to your attention, in case you hadn't seen it. I'd like to turn now to Dennis Parker, if you're on the call, Dennis. And here you had a thought and a comment and a question for the wider group. So if you can just frame that question, then we can see what others think. Thanks.
I have just a question. Hi everybody. I would find it useful to hear if anyone has had any application and negotiation experiences in dealing with the new 2020 budget initiatives. I'm working with a client with on a $4 million bid for the Jobs for Nature program, and this organisation has funded in this field, so we're not new to this to government funding, but it's at a much lower level. So the funding for nature is a budget 2020 establishing a new $200 million fund to create jobs boosting predator control efforts, restoring wetlands, regenerate planting and improving tracks, huts and other recreational and visitor assets on public conservation land. So a lot of the money will go to materials, but obviously it's going to be providing work for people. So I'd be interested to hear if anyone's got any recent relevant experience in dealing with some of these new government initiatives, and I'd love to be able to pick your brains. I'll put my contact details in the chat for my email and my phone number. Thank you.
Great, perfect. Thank you, Dennis. And it may be that somebody watches this or sees it after, so might get a contact that way. So James Lord, I think you're on the call. I would love to turn to you now, and I know you have an update from your perspective on volunteering, I think.
Kia ora, Stephen. Yes, kia ora, everyone. So I'm sure everyone will be aware, so it's Volunteer Week next week, so you'll know that there are a number of activities going on next week. The theme of the week is Te Hui o Te Mahi Taha, the benefit of working together, and there'll be a number of events going on throughout the country led by Volunteering New Zealand and other volunteering involving organisations and volunteer centres around that theme. There'll be a particular focus around what we've learnt through the pandemic, and particularly around things like empowering community-led development. So a number of things that came through from the political discussion with Hui-E, which yes, I thoroughly enjoyed attending. There are a number of things that came through that which certainly resonate with the organisations that we've been engaging with. But a couple of things that Be Collective is explicitly involved in for that week. So Jamie Walker, who many of you will know from these sessions, she often attends them. She is a part of the PSA's Progressive Thinking series, so there will be a webinar next week. So she's leading a panel discussion around being a fisherwoman or a gardener, how COVID-19 lockdown turned community on its head. So it's a discussion around how our spending more time in communities can inform the delivery of public services. And she'll be led by or participating with other community thinkers from Welfare, DIA and Inspiring Communities. And Volunteer Self are actually leading a number of webinars with different technology providers, including Be Collective on the Wednesday. So if you go to their website, if you're interested in technology-enabled solutions for volunteering, they have a number of them throughout the week. And our very own Alex Drummond will be doing that on Wednesday, talking about how voluntary sector can utilise tools to drive action and create change. So lots of things going on next week, lots of parallels with a lot of the things that we've been talking about through these sessions. And yeah, hopefully we'll see some really good action come out of the week as well. But that's all from me. Thanks, Stephen.
That's great. Hey, James, can I just ask you a question? Do you mind just summarising what Be Collective actually is? Just because not everybody will be familiar. I mean, just a short one.
Sure. And I actually just sent a message to Rochelle regarding Be Collective and wanting to do a blog post, but technically we're not a community organisation, so just making sure of whether or not we are able to do that. So we're a social enterprise, but we do work with a number of community organisations, charities, not-for-profits around their volunteer workforce. And we have developed a digital platform which we call Social Infrastructure. It's designed to enable different community organisations to partner with each other, but also other parts of the economy, so sporting groups, tertiary providers, business, government, in a way that we're able to then share and collaborate with each other in terms of volunteer workforce resource. So it's very much that idea of collective impact, so utilising people across a number of different organisations, all towards achieving a collective goal or around a particular cause. So he's getting a phone call from someone. So yes, digital platform that brings everything together within that social infrastructure, and it's a way of tracking volunteer effort. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question. It's actually quite unique. It's very innovative. It's not a CRM. It is not a notice board for volunteering opportunities, but it is a notice board for volunteering opportunities and also a CRM. It does everything. So it's often quite difficult to put us in a category with other like-minded or other types of platforms. But
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's just, this is a platform to tell other people about what people are doing. So I just know not all of us would be as familiar with it. So it was just a chance for you to highlight that. And if anybody's interested, there's a website, right? So maybe put that in the chat and then they can contact.
Sorry, what's the name and what's it called? What's the website?
becollective.com.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
You can just put it in the chat maybe, and then people can find it. And also somebody asked me what happens to the chat. It does get saved because I'm recording this. And what I then do is go through and pick out the links that I can share more broadly. So that's what I'll do with this. So if you're missing the links or whatever, don't worry. I'll send something around that summarizes what we were talking about. So Robin hasn't joined as far as I know, Mele. So what we'll do is have her speak in 2 weeks when we meet again. But we'll send around your presentation so people know what it's about. And anyway, having her speak next time will be a chance to revisit it rather than having it all today. The last sector update that I wanted to give before we split into our breakouts, it's actually come about through, some of you know I do a podcast interviewing people about their lives and what their journey has been like. And they often go into lots of depth. And one of the people I interviewed recently is on this call. And so Ann Rada and I were speaking, and during the interview, which goes for about an hour or so, she said something which was, on my tombstone, I hope that they say I helped creatives get more involved with governance boards. And so that really struck with me. That was during the lockdown. And we then agreed, well, I asked her, would you be open to writing a paper on this topic? Because I think it's something that would be really interesting for lots of people. So again, this is the paper that just came out this week, like 2 days ago, called Tomorrow's Board Diversity, the Role of Creatives. So this one, and I'm not sure how much time you estimate, but I would say dozens and dozens of hours have gone into that. So it's about 30 pages long, and we've got some great quotes from people who've read it in advance, and it's hopefully going to get out there as something that is relevant for boards, including not-for-profit boards. But Anne, do you mind just saying from your perspective, any thoughts that you had about it?
Thanks, Stephen. Hi, everybody. I'm glad Stephen asked if I would kick off writing a paper. It was a really important process, because what Stephen and I discovered is that there's bugger all that's ever been written about this. There's a few academics that study cognitive diversity, and there's of course a lot of work about bringing creativity to processes, business, governance, etc., but nothing about the role of creatives. And so we challenged ourselves to really define creatives. And for the purpose of this paper, it's about people who have some kind of foundation in the creative arts. So they may be parlaying that differently, but they would have learned to draw or write or paint or play a musical instrument or sing at some stage that's given them a foundation, so a steeping in the creative arts. The points that we make in the paper, and I hope that, oh good, Stephen's just posted it. The points that we make is that now more than ever, boards are going to be grappling with the need to reinvent their organizations, and the same people around the board table may not have the suite of skills to grapple with these things. So we're suggesting, of course, keeping very good eye on diversity around the table as we're getting better equipped to that, but adding this new specter of a creative to the mix to add the thinking outside of the box dimension that may or may not be present at the moment. So then we go into discussing the sorts of skills that creatives have. We term them conveniently as soft skills, but they're probably better humanistic skills. But the resilience, the perspective to see things from multiple lenses, the ability to take criticism and reflect on that immediately, problem solving in real time. The feedback, and then we have the last section of it is some examples of creatives in action on board. And we have a wonderful case study from a man named Brent Goldsack, who's Fonterra and Rabobank and very steeped in corporate governance, and his cry saying it's not good enough. We need now more than ever more creative minds in our governance. And the last section is about some call to action. The feedback that we've had, Stephen, I don't know about you, but absolutely everything has been incredibly affirming that the timeliness of this paper is essential right now. And that it's long overdue and it's spot on. So is that the same feedback you're getting?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So it's a quick read. I mean, Stephen says 30 pages, but there's some really beautiful artwork in there, so taking up some few pages. So it's about a 10-minute read. I really encourage you to visit that. And before I ring off, I need to also wave a flag when James said it's volunteering week next week. This is actually Gifted Education Week this week. So because I'm a director of the board of the Centre for New Zealand Centre for Gifted Education, I'll say that it's being celebrated this week. And if you're still walking, if you've got in the habit of logging your steps, during walk down, doing a lot of walking, you can go to that website, log your walks, your steps per day, and the idea is the entire international gifted community is adding their steps together to walk around the planet. So it's a nice kind of community building thing. So fun exercise. It's sunny in Auckland today, so I've already put in my 10,000 steps, and hope that you all have a happy gifted education week. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think, as Anne said, we tried to really, like, this isn't a typical paper, is it? You know, it's got the color on the front, and it's full of art itself. And that was intentional to actually do things a little bit differently. And so I just know that the people on this call will be interested. So please have a look at it. The other thing is that I know many of you will be aligned without even having read the paper. You'll probably agree with it. But what we're really keen to do is get it in the hands of people who would disagree with it or have a different perspective. So if you're able to help us by sharing it with your networks, we actually want to challenge the status quo in the thinking. And so a piece like this is only as good as the reach. You know, it's one thing if everybody who agrees with it reads it, that's great, but we actually want it to get in the hands of people who will be challenged by it. So yeah, appreciate.
Challenged and converted, shall we say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but no, it's been a fun process. I've really enjoyed it. And it just shows the idea of, you know, collaboration, that we can come together, and you know, 6 weeks ago that did not exist, and today it does. So I'd encourage each of you to think about collaborations, who you can talk with, partner with, and maybe come up with something that's pretty cool and pretty new. All right, so next, what we're going to do, well, I'll open it up. Does anybody else have anything that they wanted to update the wider group with? And I'll just give a chance for that.
Hi, Stephen. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
Go for it.
Thanks again for holding these Hui. They're great. I'm Liz Davies from Social Link, and I just put in the chat for those of you who are interested. We've just completed a post-COVID action plan for the Western Bay of Plenty social sector. I suppose our aspirations of what we want the sector to look like in the future, and sort of COVID's been a bit of a catalyst for that, and it's been very much sector driven. So yeah, I put a link in the chat to it just in case anyone's interested. So thanks for the opportunity, Stephen.
Great. No, that's perfect. And the other thing is, if you do come across something that would be of interest to the wider group, go ahead and email it to me, and then I can make sure it goes in the update that comes out afterwards. And as always, I'm recording this to then make it accessible for others who aren't able to attend on the day. So I think if people are open to it and you have time, I might send whoever is left into breakout rooms, maybe 3 breakout rooms, and you can just have a conversation. There's no structured agenda for this. It's more of a chance just to connect with others who are in the same space, maybe doing things. I always think of it as parallel train tracks, you know, heading in the same direction. And sometimes we get encouraged by knowing that there's others who are also with the same ethos, and you know, I find it encouraging anyway. So I'll send you to 3 different rooms. I appreciate some of you will need to drop off, and that's cool. And I'll just give you maybe just 10 minutes today to have a chat and brief intro, and then share what you're thinking about, and then we can come back together. I know what you're going to say, there wasn't enough time. But hopefully the point of this, as you know, is that we get conversations started, and it may be that somebody shared something that you think, I want to keep going with that conversation, or I want to find out more. So it's a chance to reach out to them as well. So yeah, that's good. So just really briefly, I forgot to say at the start of the breakouts, if any of you would be able to summarize what you talked about, we might just go through really quickly. I'm conscious it's nearly probably other things starting at 1 o'clock, but for each of the groups, were there any themes or thoughts that you thought the rest of us would be interested in?
Just one of the things that came out from us, and we were breakout room 3, that we had two major discussions, and one was Disability Connect, discussing how they wish to actually connect with broader groups. They are Auckland based, but that many of the NGOs in Auckland have people coming to them for help who have disabilities, but they don't know where they can turn to for further information and further help. And Disability Connect is really wanting to ensure that they can be an organisation who can put a disability lens onto their issues and ensure that the voice of people with disabilities can be heard. And so just to promote Disability Connect to all the Auckland organisations. And secondly, we had a discussion from Taupo Council of Social Services, and one of the big issues that came through from that discussion is that although Taupo looks like an area that is really well served and reasonably high, and it's sort of the issue I think Tauranga has too, Liz will say. I don't see Liz, she must have had to go. Everybody thinks that everything's fine in these areas that have high standard of living, but what's hidden behind that are large areas of deprivation in these places, and Taupo has large areas of deprivation and quite a lot of serious issues, and specifically housing. It's a bit like Queenstown as well, where the housing issues are quite major. And a comment that came through was that government too often relies on the high-level statistics and is not aware of the actual issues that are behind those. So those are just some of the main points that we had in our discussion.
That's good.
Thanks.
Yeah, you covered quite a lot there. That's great.
We always do. There's so much.
You always do, yeah. If you don't mind sending me a link to anything, that would be awesome, because then I can circulate it to the story, the wider group. Any of the other groups have any thoughts you wanted to share?
Stephen,
You go.
We spoke about terminology, and Catherine might want to pick that up. Quite an interesting discussion on that. And Rochelle spoke about the community sector survey that CSI and Hui-E and Volunteer in New Zealand and PNZ have done, and around the time frame and the open source dissemination of that to complement other survey work that's being done.
That's good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the results of that survey.
Yeah, so we just talked about the results expected out in July. So we're probably looking at maybe a two-tier, initial kind of overview results in possibly mid-July, and more fulsome report out by the end of July. But the response was really fantastic. Over 1,000 people 1,000 community organisations responded. So therefore, and a lot of it was qualitative. So we thought it would be primarily quantitative, but people were very generous in their qualitative response. So that means more analysis. So, but it's exciting. We're looking forward to releasing it, and certainly the open data, the data set that people will be able to use and reuse for their own purposes. And we talked about that in our group, about being able to have place-based and regional-based evidence of what's happening on the ground, particularly during this time, versus just national overview work. So our database will feed into that, and it'll just stop the repetition of questions. There's, a lot of surveys, I think we counted about 20 when we were doing it, where people have had to keep being surveyed. And the idea was, okay, well, let's release what we've got so other people can use that. And then if they want to complement that with their own individual questions or whatever, they can do that, but they don't have to replicate in a pretty kind of constrained resource sector.
It's really good. And it's great that there was 1,000+ organizations. That gives it an actual data set that has the credibility, doesn't it, rather than a couple dozen people or whatever. So that's really good. All right, I think Edgar, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I'm a tax advisor, and Stuart works for the Inland Revenue, in the charity sector. So we had a little bit of a interesting discussion there. We talked about some other things, but just a couple of 3 facts that I think Stuart said, I might misquote you, that only about 200 charities and not-for-profits applied for the wages subsidy. And the question is, why is that? And I suggested that it might be that a lot of them didn't want to apply because either their income didn't go down, even though their expenses went up, so they didn't qualify, or they were worried about the negative impact of applying in the community.
It was for the small business cash flow loan scheme, but your analysis is exactly right. Yeah, same applies.
Yeah, and also, Stuart, I think you said that 2,000 people after lockdown applied for manual rebates, charity tax credits from their donations, which supports my theory that a lot of people are not applying for their tax credit that they can from their donations because a lot of it's gone electronic and the older people aren't able to access that. And I think, Stuart, you also said that only about 1/3 of the donations tax credits had been applied for than it was last year. So we're going to have a lot of people who are supporting our organisations that haven't applied for their entitlement for tax refunds, which they will give back to our organisations often. So maybe that's something that you can put in your latest newsletter, how they can access the manual form, and to encourage them to do those applications.
I think they're putting a lot of pressure on charities because I think under lockdown charities didn't have the time to send out the receipts and everything. So I think that might be hopefully it's just a timing difference as the charities get their receipts underway. But yeah, good point. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Was there anything else from any of the groups? I wasn't keeping track of who was in which group, so any other thoughts that were worth sharing with the rest of us? No? That's fine. Well, thank you once again, everybody, for making time to come on this call. We're going to be doing them every 2 weeks, as we discussed last time. So I'll send out a link and an invite again, and send out an email probably on Monday with the YouTube link to this video, and I'll try to index it and make it easy to digest. But yeah, I don't have anything else to say. So thank you very much for joining. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you later.
See you all.